Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SAB SMEs Academy webinar series. I'm James Faulkner. I'm from the London Stock Exchange Group, and greetings from a very cold UK, United Kingdom. Today, we're going to be talking about a much more warmer kingdom and a much more exciting kingdom, which is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Al Awwal Bank is dedicated to supporting the growth and development of small and medium-sized enterprises in the kingdom. In line with this commitment, the bank will be hosting monthly webinars with experts and officials from various sectors with the aim of educating and also empowering Saudi entrepreneurs. So during the webinar session, experts will be sharing their insights, valuable information, and also practical tips to provide attendees with the knowledge and the tools to foster their growth journey. And in today's webinar, we will be focusing on how to establish a company in Saudi Arabia. And with that, I'm very delighted and I'm thrilled and excited to have Alex Nichols, the Director of KSA Expansion at Astrolabs. We have Saad Saeed, Partnerships Manager at Astrolabs. And very lastly, but not leastly, we've got Mazen Al-Sanan, who's the Business Corridors and Connectivity at Saudi Al Awwal Bank. These fine gentlemen are going to be sharing their expertise and their insights, so I'm super excited. But before we start, if I could ask you all, if you do have any questions, any queries to pick the brains of our experts, then please do so. You can ask questions in the top left-hand side of the Zoom call. So if there are any questions, please type them in and ask them, and let's pick the brains of our experts. With that being said, I'm going to be handing it over to Mr. Alex Nichols. But before I hand it over to Alex, I'm intrigued. Mr. Mazen, if you're there, I'd love to ask Saudi Al Awwal Bank. Give me a bit of a flavor in the story behind that name, please, Mr. Mazen.
Oh, hi, everybody. Saudi Al Awwal Bank is, it doesn't translate 100%. The word first, it comes direct. So Saudi Al Awwal Bank is the first bank in Saudi Arabia, and it plays the role of the central bank back in 1926 when it plays the role, and they issued the first Saudi Riyal before the central bank is being in place. And we are proud of that heritage. At the same time, we are part of the HSBC Bank, and proudly we are #1 bank that serves multinationals. And we have dedicated department just to look at, multinational corporates coming to operate in Saudi. So we speak that language, and we do our best to support foreign investors and companies, to join the economical jump of Saudi Arabia. I will be here to help answer questions as we go, and thanks for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mazen. Super insightful as well, so thank you so much. Alex, I'll hand it over to yourself.
Great, thank you so much, James, for the warm introduction, and thank you to SAB and HSBC for arranging this, hopefully a very thoughtful, thought-provoking conversation now. So yes, what we're going to be discussing today is all about how to establish a company into Saudi Arabia, and what does that mean for everyone here on this webinar. So we're going to start with a welcome introduction, where I just describe who I am and who we are at Astrolabs. We'll then talk about Saudi Arabia and give you a bit of more of an overview on why you should be considering Saudi Arabia as your next place to establish and expand to. We'll then talk about that actual very specific process and how you establish that company into KSA. We're going to talk about the two hot topics at the moment, which is the RHQ license and about the special economic zones that have very recently been talked about in the kingdom. And then we're going to end with a Q&A session where we'll pass it back to James, and we'll have Mr. Mazen as well help answer any questions that you guys have. Great. So who are we, and why are we considered the experts in establishing in Saudi Arabia? So back in 2017, when we established Astrolabs in KSA, it was when they first opened up 100% foreign ownership opportunities for businesses setting up in Saudi Arabia. So with that, we then signed an MOU with MISA, which was formerly Stagia back in 2018, which allowed us to set up businesses into KSA. Since then, we've done over 10,000 consultations with multiple businesses in multiple sectors all around the world, across many, many countries. And from that point, we've actually then set up over 1,000 companies into the MENA region, 400 of those now specifically into Saudi Arabia. Me personally, I've had 10 years of experience in consulting across multiple industries, and we have Sad here as well with me, who will be talking through the presentation and will be who looks after all of our partnerships. So I'm going to pass over to Sad now to give you a bit of a flavor as to why you should be thinking of Saudi Arabia as your next big opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So honestly, with Saudi Arabia right now, despite of some of the volatility that might be going on in different parts of the world, Saudi Arabia is currently the world's fastest growing economy, right? Actually, just back in Feb is when they announced $9 billion that would be injected into tech, for example. And just recently, before we got onto this webinar, I had found out that 45% of the SMEs in Saudi Arabia are actually female-led, which is some different news. There's been 3.9% growth just in Q1 of 2023, 93% investment increase in the year-on-year. It's very, very rapidly growing in terms of its population. Currently, for the market size, it's actually the largest in the GCC, in the MENA region.
Thank you, Sad. And I'm sure many of you have probably seen the recent news. If you have any sports fans here on the webinar, I think you only need to be a slight football fan to see the amount of investment that is going into these football players, attracting them into the kingdom, which is part of their big strategy of putting Saudi Arabia on the map, particularly in that sporting and entertainment region. You also have the very successful Live Golf, which caused a bit of controversy at the time, but again has been a huge success in the kingdom. And that's just showing how they're trying to diversify. And there is this big push from diversifying away from oil and away from the public sector into a much more mixed economy. Very much a big focus on the SMEs and on entrepreneurship within the kingdom, and also attracting those big multinational companies that they're either in tech or clean energy or entertainment or healthcare into Saudi Arabia. So here we have a bit of a flavor as to what you should expect when looking at Saudi Arabia, and a few kind of, I guess, a few hints and tips of research you should do before making that move. A few things here. So talent access. So yes, there is a fantastic young pool of talent in Saudi Arabia. I think it's like 60% is around under the age of 30 in terms of their age in KSA, which is a very, very exciting opportunity to help and grow and nurture your talent from a young age. And they have some great universities, and a lot of investment is going into these kind of training academies and internship programs in Saudi Arabia as well, to make sure that they have the skill sets able to provide for your businesses. Why is that important? Because there is also a Saudiization law in KSA where you have requirements to hire a specific number of Saudi nationals depending on your types of business, which again is all about trying to encourage the growth within the kingdom as well. A few things to know, like seasonal opportunities. The religion obviously in Saudi Arabia is Islam, and you will have Hajj and Ramadan throughout the year. If you're not aware of those religious events, definitely worth doing your research into them. I know personally from all of my team that are predominantly Saudi nationals, they are the most welcoming and friendly and hardworking people that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. So I also see this as a great opportunity for any company looking to expand into Saudi Arabia. So with that said, and I think the main reason that I'm here, so what does it take to expand into Saudi Arabia? So there are basically two main options for companies looking to expand. You have an option for startups and an option for established businesses. And these are the requirement documents that you need to do that setup. So for a startup business, you will need to get your commercial registration or certificate of incorporation, depending on where you are in the world. The documents are named differently. You'll need to have a memorandum of association or articles of association, which are your typical kind of legal documents that show shareholders, percentages, and nationalities. What you'll also need on a startup is a letter of intent, startup brief, and pitch deck. Essentially, what you're doing here is you're pitching to the Ministry of Investment of Saudi Arabia to say, this is my idea and this is my business and this is what we want to bring to the kingdom. And then they will decide on whether you qualify or don't qualify for that setup. And usually you'll need some kind of support letter from a BC company or licensed incubator of sorts. So as stated before, Astrolabs was a licensed incubator, and we provide a support letter which allows those companies to then set up into KSA. For more established businesses, it's very similar. You need a commercial registration, the MOA and the AOA, but you'll also need an audited financial statement. The audited financial statement here just needs to show that you're a healthy business and actually doing and actually performing business, receiving revenue through your books. As long as you're able to show these documents, then the Saudi Arabia ministries will welcome you with open arms. So once you've seen that you're able to qualify and get that set up into KSA, you have a few. These are the main types of options that you have when setting up your business. Okay, you can set up a limited liability company. This tends to be a very popular route. The main reason for this is the setup complexity isn't too high. You have the limited liability falls on your parent company. You can have multiple shareholders. So the limited liability company can be single owned or up to 50 shareholders. You can now have, as stated before, 100% foreign ownership. And there is no capital requirements needed. And again, this is a lot of fake news that you might see if you're just looking online. Actually, depending on the activities you're doing, the majority of activities, you don't need any capital investment to set up that business in Saudi Arabia. Your other option is a joint stock company. These are for more larger businesses usually, and again can vary depending on the type of services or activities you're doing. There might be, for instance, some kind of financial institutions that will have to set up a joint stock company, and they will also have maybe a capital investment requirement. For anything like that, I do recommend speaking to a specialist of sorts just to find out what is the best route for you and your very specific activities and company. You have the branch option. This is very, very similar in terms of setup to the limited liability company. The difference is you will not get your own articles of association. It will be linked to the parent company. Again, no minimum capital investment is needed, but liability will fall on your parent company. Finally, you have the scientific and technical office. These are essentially kind of like representative offices for you in Saudi Arabia. At the moment, the way it's working is that these are very specific to kind of pharmaceutical companies. So again, depending on the types of activities of the people on this call, on this webinar, may or may not be relevant to you. So now let's go into the actual process to get set up in Saudi Arabia. As I said, it's still relatively new for 100% foreign ownership to be available in Saudi Arabia. What does that mean? It means that it's a great opportunity to be kind of your first movers into the kingdom, because the competition presumably haven't made that jump yet. But it also means that the setup process is probably a little bit longer than you might have been used to elsewhere. So we've put this into 3 phases over the years. Phase 1 is all about getting your company set up and established. So that means MISA, which is the Ministry of Investment of Saudi Arabia, the ministry. They are the ones who have that very initial decision to make on whether you'll be able to be qualified to get that company set up. After that, we go and get your name reserved, all the way up to getting your company registered. That takes approximately 3 to 5 weeks to get complete. So that means after, usually on average, around 4 weeks, you will have your company registered in Saudi Arabia. We then have a phase 2, which is all about making sure that you're going to be able to actually do business in Saudi Arabia, which means registering with all the different ministries that you have in KSA. You need to register with the Ministry of Labour, which allows you to employ individuals. You'll need to register with the GOSI system, which is their social insurance system in Saudi Arabia, where you'll also register your Saudi national employees. You'll need a national address. So you do need to have a national address when setting up and establishing in the kingdom. You'll need to issue a visa for your general manager, and you'll need to register for Zakah. So Zakah is the tax authority in Saudi Arabia. Again, we can go into details later or another time on specifics there, but as a general rule, you're looking at anything around 20% net profit, corporate tax on net profit, 15% VAT. Withholding tax can vary anything between 5% to 20%, depending on where that money is going, why it's going there, etc. Tax specialists are recommended for anything related to that. So that is, again, another additional around 3 weeks to 3 weeks, which takes us then up to 2 months. And then you have phase 3, which is the bit where the general manager will finally get to visit Saudi Arabia and complete the process where we then activate the Chamber of Commerce, we get them their insurances, we activate all of the portals for the individuals. Each portal will have different benefits. The Keyword portal, for instance, is your kind of human resource portal to make it as easy as possible for people to, for instance, issue visas or put employment contracts onto the system. And then we get to open the bank account. And obviously that is a big part of why everyone is looking to set up in Saudi Arabia, is they want to be doing business and obviously invoicing and receiving revenues from their clients. And that is obviously another big reason why SAV Bank are being so innovative in the way that they're trying to make that process as easy and simple as possible for any of the established businesses that are now setting up into Saudi Arabia. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about specifics and examples on this. So again, if you do have questions, please fire them on to James into the chat, and I'm sure we'll try our best to answer all of them as much as possible at the end of this webinar. So now we're going to move on to the regional headquarters, because what MISA have done in the last probably 12 months now is they've launched the RHQ scheme. Now, this is a new license type when looking to set up in KSA. It's very heavily linked to any people that are looking to work for government projects in Saudi Arabia from 2024 onwards. So we're going to talk about now, Sad will go into some details as to the benefits as to what these companies get when looking at this RHQ scheme, and why everyone should really be heavily looking at this as an option.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Like as Alex was saying, I believe as of January 1st, 2024, any government contracts, in order to secure them in terms of actually the works or procurement, will only be awarded for companies who have their regional headquarters for MENA region within the kingdom, actually. But there's a few differences in the sense that, yes, it is your regional headquarters, so that means it would be the strategic, it's more, the purpose of this is actually for supporting, managing, and providing strategic direction to its branches, subsidiaries, or affiliates that are operating within the MENA region, right? So just understanding some of the prerequisites and what that means, the licensed RHQ should operate as a foreign LLC or branch in Saudi Arabia. It is important for the company or the corporation to have 2 subsidiaries in different countries, excluding the kingdom itself. The RHQ would be its own legal entity, and there is a requirement of maintaining a physical office. Now, I think the biggest question that we get all the time is, am I able to conduct commercial operations through my RHQ? So the main purpose of the RHQ is actually to act as providing direction, right? And that means your strategy formulation, strategic coordination, financial review. You must have a certain executive level employees within the company. But in terms of your commercial operations, or aka your revenue generating operations, these would be handled by affiliate companies, again, that are operating with the appropriate licenses, whether it may be the service investment license, the industrial investment license, and the process for that was what Alex was mentioning before. Another thing is that the benefits, some of the benefits are 10 years Saudization exemption, the visa limitations, and for foreigners to actually be able to be a part of this initiative, there are certain benefits that the government has put in place in terms of tax relief or Saudization exemptions. Moving on into the special economic zones is what we hear about recently, has been making a lot of headway in the news. And to understand a little bit more about the economic zones, they are, yes, they do have certain benefits to them, but the focus aligned with the Vision 2030 has been, let's create these economic zones to cater to different industries. So for example, the King Abdullah Economic City Special Economic Zone is located near the Mecca province, and it's more focused towards automobile, supply chain, pharmaceutical, ICT, consumer goods, whereas Ras Al Khair Special Economic Zone, for example, is more related to shipbuilding and MRO. And these are actually strategically placed in terms of geography within the kingdom to be able to facilitate these different industries, right? The Cloud Computing Special Economic Zone, obviously, is focused more on the computing zone, and Jazan, for example, is more focused on food processing and logistics and metal conversion and more industrial. When we talk about what do benefits look like for these special economic zones, is that there are certain tax benefits. There are certain flexibilities around regulation, being able to attract and hire foreign talent, for example, during the first 5 years, and withholding tax, as Alex was mentioning, for your mainland licenses. It is one of the benefits that you do have with these special economic zones. But just to clarify, these economic zones are more focused on companies that are operating in the designated industries. That is the focus of the special economic zones. Moving forward, I believe we'll leave it to James to cater to some of the question and answers. And yes.
Thank you very much, Saad. Super insightful, very informative. We do have a few questions here, so I will ask this question. I'm going to designate it to you, Mazen. We actually have 2 questions at the moment. What are the steps involved to opening a bank account? So Mazen, if you don't mind taking that question, what are the steps involved in terms of opening a bank account in the kingdom?
Well, that will be an extension to the slide, okay, presented by Alex earlier, that the whole thing starts by getting the commercial registration from the Minister of Foreign Investment. Right after, it's almost the same, we will ask for to open the account. We have a pack of requirements, okay, including the documents and who's authorized. We share immediately, okay, with the client, and they can fulfill with the support of you guys, okay, and between the two of us, we'll work it together. We've gone through this, and we have good successful stories for other clients, and we'll take it from there. The good news, or the best way of doing this, is that we will provide the list. That list will be the checking list for what to provide. You can provide the same via email. We verify, and only when all requirements are in place, we can meet on one-to-one and sign in the presence of the bank representative. So that saves time, okay, and effort of exchanging physical document back and forth and things like that. I hope that this is the very short one to the point, if I can.
Very short, but very concise. Yeah, that was wonderful, Mazen. There's another question that's come through, which is great. It looks like they're coming through thick and fast. And just once again, for the audience, if there are any questions for any of the experts, please, top left-hand side of the screen, put in your questions and queries, and then we will answer them. Another question has come through. Do Saudi rules and regulations mandate any requirements regarding authorized signature? I suppose, Mazen, I'll hand that one over to yourself as well. Once again, do Saudi rules and regulations mandate any requirements regarding authorized signature?
Oh yeah, this is a very interesting question. Yes, in fact, one of the facts is that the Saudi rules and regulation, which is applied for all banks operates in Saudi, mandates that the authorized person who's gonna do the final authorization for any payment has to be one of three categories or three options: either a Saudi citizen working for the company, or a GCC resident, or an expat holding work permit called Iqama, okay, under the sponsorship of the company. So that's the three options. That doesn't prevent multinational corporates from viewing and managing and having online access to the company financial activities in Saudi. They have full access from any home country. The only restriction is that the final push button, okay, on the online banking has to be somebody who's reachable or known to the Saudi government, being one of the three options, that is.
Being one of the three options, good. But it's good to know there are three options at least, but that's very clear and concise, Mazen, so thank you. We have more questions coming through. There's loads, so I really appreciate everyone being interactive. What are the high demanding industries KSA is expecting or promoting to be invested from FDIs? Good question, actually, but that could be to you, Alex.
Yeah, super interesting, actually, and they are really diversifying. So we had a meeting with the Ministry of Investment just the other day, and Mr. Fahad was telling us about the 44 sectors, I think it is, that he's kind of focusing on. So they are very much diversifying. But to give you like my kind of personal intake, I guess. So tourism is obviously a big section. You only have to see what's happening at the Red Sea project to really see how they're going to be driving, particularly on that 5-star luxury experience over there. And I do recommend anyone to look into the Red Sea project if they're unaware of it. It's one of the PIF projects, and again, you look at the line and everything happening, which is grabbing all the headlines. It's super interesting. With that, then construction is obviously another big part of it, because there's so much to be going on, so much building work, there's so much construction needed for all of the malls that they're building, the roadwork, connectivity. So yeah, construction's another big one. But when we went also to Montreal the other week, which is mainly focusing on the SMEs, and they actually talked about more in terms of mining and clean energy, so kind of green tech, which again, super interesting because it goes against what people probably perceive as oil. It's like, actually, no, they're diversifying and reallocating the money that was previously maybe spent on oil and putting that into clean energy. So they would probably be my top ones. And tech is obviously huge everywhere around the world. So tech is obviously another big sector for the kingdom.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, green energy, tech, construction, tourism, and I'm sure the list can go on and on and on. But obviously, in the interest of time, we better pass on. And the Red Sea project as well is extremely interesting. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. Talking about the chat, lots of questions coming through. So thank you very much for the industries in the sector. So thank you. The next question: does the GM have to live in KSA? So I suppose that's down to maybe
we can take that,
or to Alex.
Yeah, we can. I don't mind. We can take this one. We've from the 400 plus companies that we've expanded, the GMs tend to vary in their location. Do they have to live in Saudi Arabia? No. Do they have to be a Saudi national? No. What we found from our experience is that initially they might not live there, but very quickly they realize the opportunity that they have in terms of growing their business, and very quickly know that they should be in Saudi Arabia to really grow that business. There does need to be a general manager, and they do need to have an Iqama to, as Mazen said earlier, to open up that bank account. So that is a requirement to get your company fully established. But in terms of where they're located, they don't have to live permanently in Saudi Arabia. I find most general managers these days do a lot of traveling all around around the world.
If I may add to this, okay, I think this comes from the list of the requirement and says that the general manager to get his visa to Saudi. To elaborate on this, the visa is online for business. It's not a big issue. It's a very smooth process. And that's required only at the time of signing documents, okay, with the bank and others. So they can in and off, they don't have to live here. They just establish the business, then they leave. And when I talk about having residency or Iqama, I'm talking only about the authorized person. And they can do the authorization even from overseas. They just come in, whoever authorized, whether it's a GM or CFO, whatever, it can come in, issue his work permit and leave. And that's all. And they can do it from any other country as well.
Thank you, Mazen. And I forgot to tell the audience that even if there's a question and to our experts, then, I'd like more people to answer. So it's not just Alex. I love the fact that you're joining in, and it's more of a organic conversation. So thank you very much, Mazen. Thank you, Alex. Don't forget, people, please bring your questions in and pick the brains of the experts. Next question coming in says, why should FDIs look at KSA in particularly and apart from the UAE? I'm going to leave that open to whoever wants to take that one. So once again, why should FDIs look at KSA apart from UAE?
I mean, honestly, look, if here's my take on it, and we get this question quite a bit, because if you look at what the MENA region was 10, 20 years ago, yes, Dubai was definitely the focus, the UAE was definitely the focus. In order to explain the not just the opportunity in Saudi Arabia, but also the size of the market size, it is in comparison to the rapid growth of UAE, mainly Dubai, back in the early 2000s, on steroids, if to put it into perspective. So when you are looking at for the FDIs, that's why we're seeing a lot of growth in Saudi Arabia. And like I mentioned earlier, because of the certain volatility in other parts of the globe, everyone's focused on where they can make an impact in terms of being in the fastest growing economy, has its own benefits, and aligned with the whole Vision 2030. I think Mazen has something to add.
Oh yes, I fully agree. Okay, it's about the size of business in Saudi, and we could agree as well that 5-6 years ago there was a lot of business barriers, I should say, for entering the country, issuing visa, smoothing the process of establishing the whole business and companies was a bit complicated. Minister of Foreign Investment did a great job to simplify this as they can, and this is coming much faster than we expected, to the level that even the Ministry of Foreign Investment, okay, is having RMs to support companies in their strategy operating in Saudi. So the need or the limitation or the difficulties was in Saudi 5-6 years ago are no longer there. That's why Saudi is welcoming everybody to come and have their own presence in the region in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Mazen, and thank you, Saad. Really interesting to know that it's going to be a lot more easier than it was previously. So the future is looking very, very bright indeed. Next question. So audited financial statements from a foreign jurisdiction are required for an established business to set up in KSA. Keyword in brackets here, with inverted commas, is audited. So once again, so audited financial statements from a foreign jurisdiction are required for an established business to set up in KSA.
Yeah, so we get this question a lot, particularly from, I don't know where this person's company is, but particularly from the UK companies, because actually there's no requirement for you guys to have your financials audited depending on the size of your businesses. And again, it could be a US company where I know it can be a little bit costly at times to get those audited financial statements. However, it is something that is required to get that MISA license in the very first step of getting your company established. It's the way for them to prove that your company is running and is generating revenue and is actually doing good business in their home country. So yes, it does need to be audited. That is one of the requirements.
Thank you, Alex. I see no hands up from Mazen or anyone else, so I'm going to be I'll be moving on. Loving the questions, everyone. So please keep the questions coming. We have another one coming. Start to finish. Typically, how long does the process take? And are there any annual renewal activities for companies?
Yes. So the setup process, on average, you're looking at around 2.5 to 3 months for a foreign business. Again, a lot of it will depend on where the company is located, where the GM is, how quickly people are able to draft their articles of association. But that's kind of our average time frame that we recommend to our clients. What was the second part to that question, James? There was another part. It was time frame plus anything to be aware of or something.
No, and are there any annual renewal activities for companies? That would be it.
Yes. So annual renewals, everything is annually renewed in terms of the MISA license, your commercial registration, some of your portals also just need to be renewed annually. All of these are super easy, by the way. A lot of these they're making all done digitally. Again, part of the Saudi 2030 vision is to go as digital as possible. So nothing to be concerned about or worried about there. Visas as well, and ikamas will be renewed on an annual basis, so something else to be aware of. And yeah, fees, again, probably a separate discussion, but there are some fees associated to each of those, depending on what the renewal is. And Mazen has his hand up.
Yep, Mr. Mazen.
Sorry, I cannot hold my words. One more thing, they know your customer is frequently done on 3 years cycle. So once you open the account, you provide all the information, okay, and as per the rules and regulation of the country, it has to be renewed or reviewed again every 3 years, okay, just, exchange of documents, if there is anything changed, location, definitely is going to go through the process, but it's a cycle of every 3 years KYC.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mazen.
Oh, and audited financial statements. You need to you need to do your audited accounts every year as well.
Indeed. We have a final question. So again, once again, to the lovely audience, if you do have any other questions, please put them in the top left-hand side of the screen. Quite a good question, actually. Are trademarks and patents necessary in Saudi Arabia?
Interesting. So technically not needed. You will need to get a company seal for the business. When it comes to patents, it's one of those things which is highly recommended to go and get. It's super easy to get, again, mainly done online, and there's lots of specialists out there that are able to assist and help with this. So although it isn't something that is an absolute must or requirement, it is something that we would highly recommend anyone in that field.
I don't see Mazen's hand up at the moment, so I take it there's nothing on that part. At the moment, there's no more. There are no other questions. So I take it that's probably going to be it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your last chance. Questions in the top left-hand side. For me personally, it's been really informative and extremely insightful. So thank you very much. A big thank you to Saudi Al Awwal Bank, otherwise known as SAB. I mean, this has been an SAB SME Academy webinar series. Mr. Alex Nichols, Director of KSA Expansion at Astra Labs, Saad Saeed, Partnerships Manager at Astra Labs, and none other than Mazen Al-Sanan, Business Corridors and Connectivity at SAB. I really thank you for your time. But last and foremost, and most importantly, thank you, the people who've joined this webinar, the audience, the most important person, the customer. We are going to be doing a lot more of these webinar series in the future. I sincerely hope that you can join, but from the bottom of our hearts, we want to say thank you very much. Thank you all. Sabah al khair. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.